Hello, this is Nader Green 7000, and this is the first of two parts of a 23-part series called Alex's Lady, the story of a man named Alex Lecamp meeting the Lady of the Lake in the year 2018. Part 1, Friday, Alex Lecamp. Alex sat on a bench by the lake. He got bored and stood up. He looked at the gravel ground for suitable rocks to skip across the lake. He wasn't all that good at skipping rocks, and most of them, if not all of them, fell into the lake with an ungracious blip. The rocks sent ripples across the lake's surface, disappearing into the slight waves caused by the wind. Eventually, he gave up on trying to skip rocks and started throwing random rocks into the lake. He watched the heavier rocks splash against the surface of the water and sink to the bottom of the lake. Eventually, his hands got hold of a brick. Alex didn't know where the brick had come from. There weren't any brick structures around except for him. The brick was a mustard yellow color. Alex could feel some of the mud along the edges of the brick come off on his fingers, turning the parts of his fingers brown. Other parts of the brick had mud that had dried onto the surface of the brick. The only way to make any progress in restoring the brick to its former glory would be to scrape the dirt off. This was not something Alex wished to pursue. Feeling the weight of the brick, he imagined the splash it would make across this lake. Thought about how far he could throw the brick, and it made a personal challenge to throw it farther. The brick didn't go as far as he thought it would. The splash more than made up for it. With his dirty hands and decided to head back home. He felt a sudden sense of pain and heard a rock bounce off the back of his head. Alex turned around to see a woman standing behind him.
What you throwing bricks for?
Alex studied the woman standing in the lake. Parts of her dress were covered with small nickel scales, which increased in number towards the bottom of her dress. The dress was a lime green and wet. The dress being wet from the lake rendered the material of the dress translucent.
Well, do you want your brick back?
No, not really. Sorry I hit you. I didn't think this lake had a lady in it.
I agree. You didn't think at all. Very careless to throw bricks in public. You didn't hit me, but you could have. This is your brick, isn't it?
No, I did not throw that in the lake.
So, you deny that you were the one throwing bricks?
No, I threw some rocks and a yellow brick in the lake, not gold bullion. He said this looking at the gold ingot in her hand, stamped with 999.9 gold, 1,000 grams.
Yeah, I know. For your honesty, I'm going to reward you by giving you this, but please don't throw anything else in the lake. I do live in it.
Are you sure? This is probably worth a lot of money.
There's much more gold in my lake. More to answer your question. No, I'm not sure if this is a good idea. I gave a little girl a gold coin after she made a wish on a quarter. The next day, her friend came by the lake. The brat threw her whole piggy bank in the lake. I would hate for a whole truckload of bricks to be dropped on me.
She stepped out of the lake in the shiny black shoes and handed the gold object with a yellow brick underneath. Alex fixated at the thing in his dirty hands, absent-mindedly passing the brick to his offhand, forgetting to thank her as the lady of the lake vanished from his perception. He walked home, passing a pawn shop. Buy/sell gold, we buy guns. Payday loans, ATM inside, open. It wouldn't be luck except that this wasn't the only place that would have taken his gold. Alex walked up to the window and looked at the display. $1,800 and $1,200 gold necklaces sat there alongside chains and brooches of similar prices. He walked in. A man was bargaining with a pawnbroker, saying, "You don't understand, this is worth at least $1,800. I'll give you $720 for it." "You just said $800. Time is money, and you're using a lot of my time. As you can see, I have other customers waiting." Gesturing to Alex. "That is my final offer." "What'd I say?" $740. "Right, $740. Just sign here. Your copy, my copy, and your check." Alex saw him grab the emerald black gold brooch the man was selling and place it somewhere behind the counter. Alex placed his object on the counter. "Wow, fascinating. I'd say this is a classic 1990s yellow effing brick. If I wanted a brick, I'd go to that red brick church down the road with a pick and hoe and would give you 25 cents for it." You trying to rob me? Alex had placed the yellow brick on the counter by accident, but quickly came up with a save. That brick is worth its weight in gold. Oh, really, nutjob? Yeah, I got the... Get the fuck out of my store. I got the gold right here. Alex says he placed the gold bar on the table. This is a lot of gold. For a second I thought you were actually trying to sell me a brick. Ha! I'll be happy to buy this off you. Any proof you own this gold? No, I just got gifted from this lady who lives in the lake I met today. Can't buy this from you unless you can prove you own it. No one can. It's the law. Could get in a lot of trouble. Oh. But since we're friends and all, I'll give you $600 for it. Just don't go to the cops. I don't have to use my favor with Detective Bark. You know, the yellow shirt mugger once tried to sell his ill-gotten gains at my store. Only mugged people who wore yellow. Weird guy. Good thing I wasn't wearing yellow. Good thing for him, that is. It's worth more than $600. You're right. The $600, $215 sound right? It's at this moment that Alex realized the man was originally talking about $600,000, not $600. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. It wasn't as though Alex had worked for the money anyways. Just sign here. Your copy, my copy, and your check. Say, why did this gal at the lake just hand you a bar of gold? She wasn't a dragon or maybe a leprechaun, was she? No, leprechauns are all male. I threw this brick in the lake and she appeared. And she handed me this gold bar. Alex headed towards the store. The broker followed behind him. Alex left the store with his broker still inside. Alex looked back at the window display. The broker placed a new item on the display. The emerald gold brooch. $1,800. Part 2. Saturday. Jordan crime. Jordan felt along the church's red brick exterior. He came to a brick that was different than the others. Carved in the brick was an X. It was loose. He pulled it from the wall. Behind the brick was a piece of paper. Written on it was a secret code. He pulled out his wallet. Jordan placed the paper into his wallet and then put the wallet back in his pocket before carrying the X brick to the lake. Threw the X brick in the lake. Fell through the air, making a violent splash. Wait for something to happen. He began to feel like he was being stood up on a date. Several girls had stood him up in the past. This feeling made him want to leave, so he turned his back to go back to his pawn shop.
Hello?
A woman said from behind him, her face covered in blood dripping down from the top of her head past her chin and onto her chest, staining the top of her dress. She held up a gold ingot. Yes, it is. May I have it back, please?
Liar! I hate liars. If you want this gold, you're going to have to swim for it.
The lady of the lake threw the gold bar into the lake. It fell through the air before making a violent splash. Jordan left his wallet on a bench with his pants, shirt, and shoes by the lake and dove in after the gold bar with his tannish green boxers. He swam to the spot where he saw the gold bar land and took a deep breath. He put his head underwater and opened his eyes. Despite his ability to open his eyes, underwater he would have to get closer to see all the way to the bottom. He pulled his head up for another breath. He looked around, not seeing the woman. He took a deep breath. He tried to dive but started to float to the surface of the lake. He pulled his head up again. Exhaled, inhaled, exhaled, then violently dived. He found himself immediately in the darkness of the lower level of the lake, his fingers scraping against the pebbles as they disturbed an aluminum can. His fingers found another aluminum can, this one made immobile by being buried in the silt gathering at the bottom of the lake. It was time to go back up for oxygen. Something stopped him. Not in his mind, something physically stopped him from ascending. He was held down, face against the metal can buried in the lake, feet moving above his head in unsuccessful motions to right himself. He had heard drowning was a peaceful way to die, once one accepted one's own demise. People who had come close to death in this way reported it as such. A smooth transition from one's lake to the lake of fire, or to heaven for those not saved from drowning but everyone's just dessert. Being eaten alive had never been reported as peaceful as teeth bit into one of his legs. The teeth chewed right through his leg, severing it at the knee. If he wasn't underwater, he would be crying in pain, but he held his mouth shut, only exposing his teeth to the lady of the lake's lake. The taste of the unchlorinated water seeping through his to the tips of his tongue. He maneuvered himself so his shoulder blades raked against the sharp pebbles and gravel floor of the lake. Closing his lips back together, he saw the inverted waves on the surface of the lake, above tiny fish, above a bloody cloud, above a dark mess of long, floating female hair. He felt the force keeping him down release. He straightened his body a foot above the floor of the lake, with his hands planted to swim across the bottom of the lake away and then up. It restrained him by struggling to hold his arms to his sides. Then the teeth ripped a chunk out of his neck. Blood flowed out as water flowed into his lungs, around tiny bubbles. The teeth ate his left bicep just as he thought about trying to beat it off him. He died. His corpse was carried through a cave under the lake. The corpse was dragged out of the water underground, passed through a door leading into a small living space carved out of the tunnel. It was set on a table where it was